Okay, welcome to the CEFACT Global Trust Registry project meeting. We're recording this meeting. We'll automatically generate a transcript and minutes of the meeting, which we'll review and then publish to see that they are correct. If you haven't been here before, you're very welcome to put a note in the chat message or elsewhere to say who you are and what you're doing. We might actually do that a bit today if we can. I know, Saeed, you're traveling, so it might be not easy to introduce yourself, but it'll be good, I think, for what we're going to be doing later. We're going to be focusing on the work Fides has been doing with KVK in the Netherlands, and that's going to be very interesting. Quick reminder for those who haven't attended before about conduct and IPR rules. This is a CEFACT project. It comes with a body of workarounds, project ways of working and development processes. The primary aim is to provide the world really with open source, royalty-free content to be used for the world's benefit. So it's a good thing. But if you've got IP locks and patents and so on, then please be aware of that's our process. So don't sort of share things you shouldn't. And if you want, you can read the links to find out more about these processes and the IPR rules. Today's agenda is going to be, we'll do the introductions in a second. A quick recap on last 2 weeks ago, a quick recap on actions and updates, and then we're basically going to dive into and give most of the time to Hamen, yourself, Saeed, and the whole sort of project you've been working on. There's also this Senegal stuff that's going on. In the background, I'll change this detail because I've given you the wrong link on this slide. I'll put a better link on in the chat. If you want to watch the Senegal panel session, it will start about an hour and a half from now. Just less than an hour and a half from now. And myself and Alina, Steve Capel, the Indian delegation will be on the panel, as well as a UN Citral law expert, Jan Huang, who happens to come from the University of Sydney. The last few meetings, we actually discussed these presentations in the last meetings around how we should fit in learning from the real world examples of projects such as the work with KVK. So this week, we're going to be hearing from the KVK kind of project team. And in 2 weeks' time, we'll then hear from Alex Tweedale and the work that Czech have been doing in a similar sort of space. That's the main piece of work, but there's a whole bunch of things going on around updates to content and so on. The key actions that we've been prosecuting these last 2 weeks have been around these documents and their structure. So Alina and I have agreed to kind of a separation of focus for us. I am focusing on document number 3, which is this digital identity anchor body of work. And Alina is focusing on document number 4, which is this whole body of work around legal governance and operational sort of framework for what we're calling GRID, the Global Registrar Information Directory. So that's the sort of way we're dividing up the work. Sankashan has been adding contributions along the way as well on a number of sort of facets to do with technology and architecture. I am actively moving these documents, these Google Docs, into the UNICC GitLab space, and I'm now declaring it to be it's stable, but it's quite active. It's a bit like a volcano that's sort of bubbling away, right? It's not exploding, but it's still quite active, and I'm still doing quite a lot. So the Earth will move every now and then if you go to that website. But basically, we're trying to make sure that content on UNICC's GitLab space is the sort of formal content, and the website pages are representing the project adequately or faithfully. The really volatile content that we're working on will keep in the Google document space. And that's what I was going to say before I hand over to you, Harman. So I'm going to, I guess, stop sharing my screen unless anybody has any questions. What I'd love you to do is start off with introducing the team if you can, and I'll go on mute until questions get asked and stuff.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks, John, and well, happy to share some of the work that we've been doing, I would say, in the last past years. But maybe before I start, Saeed, could you maybe do 1 or 2 lines of intro about yourself, if it's possible, from the train?
Yes, I'm now at the railway station. Go to a different platform. Sorry about that. Got a little bit
no problem.
Time issues. Well, I'm Said. I'm a project manager at the Chamber of Commerce Innovation Lab. And a couple of years we are now experimenting with digital identity wallets, the personal wallet, and also the business wallet. And we do different projects with different stakeholders. One of the projects is called Company Passport. There we look for semantic interoperability, how we can make it work. So that's a project that also is a couple of years ongoing. We did also with Fides Lab. We are experimenting how to use wallets for the registration process for incorporating a company, a business. And the main issue is there how we provide the attestations that are needed for that process. I think for now it's enough. I think Harman, you can take it over.
Yeah, thanks, Said.
Yeah.
And just pitch in later on in the call if you want to add something. But
Okay,
no worries.
okay, Harman, thanks.
Thanks. Victor, do you maybe want to briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Victor van der Hulst. Together with Harman, one of the co-founders of the Fides community and also Fides Labs, in which we want to experiment with wallets and credentials, and especially to accelerate digital trust for individuals, organizations, and also things. So such a global registry is really important also for the work we are working on.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Let me then start sharing my screen. I'm just going to share my entire screen, which makes it easier. Okay, so I've prepared only 3 slides because I prefer to start showing some things. Can you see my screen? I think so. Huh?
Yes.
So mainly what we want to do is we want to provide some examples. It's a peak, right? So it's been quite a lot of things, I would say, in this area, in this space for the past years. But I now want to focus on a couple of things that we felt are most relevant for the GTR project. And well, the logos on the right-hand side are actually the companies that are mostly involved in this particular examples that we're going to show today. So very briefly, before I start showing the example, so a little bit about Fides community. So Fides is actually an open community that really focuses on the adoption of credentials, not just for people, but especially also for organizations and things, which can be a very wide range of things. So it started off in Holland, but it actually at the moment has 60+ supporters from over 10 countries. And what does it really mean, that community? It's actually a collaboration which actually results in all kinds of tooling, for instance, wallet catalogs, credential catalogs, interoperability profiles, a very important part. There's an open testbed that can be used by any project, and we have examples of identity resolvers. That's what we will show today. And there are all kinds of templates that can be shared amongst each other to more quickly do concrete examples, because that's what we really were missing in the past years. Is these are very complex, vague topics, and it's important to start showing concrete examples to figure out what people mean and if it's working or not. So, and Victor and me, as Fides Labs, we are facilitating a range of labs for a while already, and yeah, that's what we want to show today. So there's a couple of those solutions and labs that are either running right now or actually have been running already a while ago. And the first thing that I will show when I switch to the browser is actually a sandbox environment of the Chamber of Commerce. So actually where Said works. And in that environment, we are the Chamber of Commerce, the KVK, is actually issuing all kinds of credentials. And we will show in this example how a company can actually download what we call their LPIT credential, which in UNTP terminology is actually a digital identity anchor. I'll go over these examples high level, and then afterwards we can also dive into the details if people have questions. In parallel, I will show a business wallet, an organizational wallet from one of the partners in the community. So the whole idea is that we do all these things based on open interop profiles and open specifications, which means that any compliant tool or any compliant software vendor can implement this. So I will now show one particular example of a software vendor that we've been working quite a lot with, Cordenco, but there's actually all kinds of others that can do the exact same thing. But I will show how you can get the LPIT and some other things. Then I will move over to what we have called blue pages, FIDES blue pages, which I think in UNTP terminology is an identity resolver. And it's based on the IDs. So this is also one of those things that we started a while ago, which seems to fit exactly on what's happening in the GTR and UNTP space. And then I can tell a little bit about the ongoing projects that actually are using all of these ingredients / legal blocks that I mentioned above. So let me switch. So let me start. This is the Mijn KVK sandbox environment, the Chamber of Commerce environment. So it's an environment where entrepreneurs can log in, and based on that, they can download all kinds of credentials that the KVK is issuing. So it is actually all kinds of data that already exists at the Chamber of Commerce, like probably most Chamber of Commerces in the Western world. They have all kinds of databases, but what we have been showing in the past years is how can you credentialize those things. So, and in this case, I'm going to show how they can download their, let me just log in as a guy called Klaas. So if you log in, actually in this example, this person Klaas actually is a director of a range of companies. This is a lot, right? So usually it will be one or maybe a few, but in this case there's, and I'm now showing the example of one of the companies called Dutchcraft Furnishing, of which he is a director. So the idea is that there is this legal person identifier credential that will be issued by the Chamber of Commerce. And the idea is that that Klaas can save it in their organizational wallet. So what I will now first do is I will switch to that example of an organizational wallet. So the difference between an organizational wallet is really for the company, business wallet, versus the personal wallet that Klaas may use as an individual. So this organizational wallet, in this case, is from the provider Cordenco. And this is the place where the company, in this case, Dutchcraft Furnishing, is actually is able to manage all the credentials that are about this company. So this could also be ISO certificates, all kinds of quality credentials, could also be self-issued credentials. And in this case also, the credential that the KVK is going to issue, this LPIT, right? So this identifier of the company, issued by the formal business registry of the Netherlands, is actually going to be stored in this wallet. So if you then would look here, it would be there. So if I click here, save in wallet, it will actually move to this organizational wallet tooling, which and then Klaas is being asked, do you want to accept that? So I accept that. And from that moment on, there is this LPIT credential in the wallet of Dutchcraft Furnishing. So once it's in that organizational wallet, which can be done by any company, the company can decide to publish some of these credentials in what we call a public profile, which is actually under the hood, this is a DID document with all kinds of endpoints. So from a technical perspective, this means that the company can decide to add all kinds of verifiable presentations, linked verified presentations, to their public profile. And we often compare this with kind of a decentralized Google business profile. So the whole idea is that the company fully controls their data in their organizational wallet, and they can decide what to publish, in this case, in a public profile. So these are already a range of credentials that have been published. And when I move over later on to this identity resolver solution, the blue pages, you will see that that data actually will be published and crawled. But before I move over, I just quickly go over the this organizational wallet. And in general, what we say is such wallets for organizations or business wallets do three things. They can issue credentials, either for others or for themselves. They can store them, like I just showed, and they can also verify them. So, for instance, also in the use cases of verifiable trade documents, etc., all these capabilities are really needed. But what's also an important part is of course, the whole trust. So in the sandbox pilots that we're currently running, we're experimenting a lot with trust lists, which of course is an important topic at the moment. And what we're currently doing is we're working with a list of trusted lists that FIDES is publishing, which is kind of a example of also how Europe is doing using the ETSI trust list. And it means that in each of these organizational wallets, every organization is actually configuring what the trusted issuers are for different credentials that they and they can either specify them one by one, or they can actually use a trust list. And of course, probably also with the EU business wallet, there will be regulated sets of trust lists. And we're currently experimenting with the exact formats that the EU is moving towards. But let me move to the blue pages. So this is now the wallet of an organization. Let's then move to the blue pages. So what we've been doing is we've created this blue pages example, which is nothing more than a very light crawler of the ID documents. So the idea is that in this directory, you're able to find the information about companies. And that's why we kind of call it a decentralized Google business registry. But the idea is this is not a big database. The data of all this information is actually coming from these organizational wallets. So it's really decentralized, federated. The only thing what this solution is doing, it's crawling the DID documents. It's really meant for discovery. So the trust is not coming from these catalogs. And it also means that anybody can kind of set up these kind of catalogs to allow discovery. So for instance, at the same time, in the current project, together with the Chamber of Commerce, we're also setting up something which we call the dynamic business registry, which is the exact same concept where we are crawling the DID documents of organizations and showing the linked verifiable information. So this information actually is coming from the organizational wallets. And we are also doing the exact same thing in a project which is related to clean fuel badges, which means actually that we can crawl the ID documents that are actually for fuel badges. And at the same time, we do a different crawling of the IDs that are representing organizations. So you could have hundreds kind of examples of that. And we're doing also an e-invoicing project. And actually that's where we really focus on all the information about the metadata of e-invoicing systems. So for instance, in this case, you can see that FIDES has published all kinds of metadata about the e-invoicing system that this company, in this case FIDES itself, is supporting. And this information is all stored and coming from those organizational wallets, decentralized. And the Blue Pages are only crawling it. So this Blue Pages solution has already been developed about a year ago. It's all open source. We're using it in all these different use cases, and also kind of further, let's say, finding feedback on it and all these different use cases. You can find everything also via the FIDES website. If you would go to Blue Pages, in the About section, there's all kinds of information also about the architecture and the source code. And I think what's also important to realize is that this discovery mechanism is of course also available via an API, which means that several of these organizational wallets are already capable of actually crawling all those organizations and the AEDT documents via this API. So the actual web interface is just, let's say, the human interaction. We feel it's very helpful to kind of explain the concept, but actually most of the tools and use cases actually use the API interface. And as an example, again, in this credential, in this Credenco organizational wallet, in their contacts overview, you can actually add your companies in your trusted by searching in the FIDES Blue Pages directory. So like you see, if I just type something, so if I go here to Blue Pages, so there's all kinds of organizations. So if I would look for Auckland, I type in Auckland, you see it will find it, and I can add it to it. And once you've found it, then actually the discovery is more or less done already. And from that moment on, it's always a matter of direct contact between the organizational wallet and the DI document of the other party in the chain. So then there's no need for the Blue Pages anymore. So what we found that people really liked is this whole concept of organizations now having kind of a persistent DID and all kinds of other identifiers, being it, for instance, a KVK number in Holland, or a line number, or a GS1 number, or a telephone number, or email address. Everything can be added as endpoints in the DID document, and from that moment on, resolvable via this kind of a Blue Page catalog. So as an example, Dutch Craft Furnishing has this telephone number, but it also has this Chamber of Commerce number, and I can search for either of it. So for instance, this is this telephone number. If I search for that, I will find the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know what's happening. Okay, let me just search for 0690. It's there again. So I think that's one of the powerful things. It can really connect any of the identifiers. So there's always these kind of religious discussions about what is the ultimate identifier. I think with these kind of architectures, you can connect whatever identifier, but the DID is the identifier that's really being owned by the company itself, and any other identifier can be combined. Okay, so there's one other thing I want to show. Yeah, so like I said, in each of these organizational wallets, but it can also be in personal wallets, there is this configuration of trust lists. So in this case, these kind of sections. And as a neutral party in each of these sandbox use cases, FIDES has kind of created an initial list of trusted lists. So there is a GitHub repo, and in there is this FIDES list of trusted lists and also a trust list, which I think could also act as good stuff for discussion, input for discussion, because it could also be similar what maybe Grid will be doing. So, and it's also similar to what Europe is doing. So Europe has one list of trusted lists, which refers to each of the trusted lists for every country. And that's exactly also how we are experimenting with this. So Holland will have a trust list, Germany, like any other country could have. And then there's this overarching list of trusted lists, which just refers to those trust lists. And we are using the exact same formats for that, which gives a lot of interesting feedback. Yeah, I think that's the main thing that I wanted to show. Let me switch to the meeting. Is there anyone that has particular questions on this?
I got a few. I was typing them into the Q&A tool that is available for these meetings that I haven't used before, so I don't know if everybody else can see them. I've just made, I hope, those Q&A questions are available to all. There may be some typos in them, but I'll read them out while others are thinking of their questions, and we can probably do the hands up thing as well. They're in the sort of the time order in which I kind of more or less I wrote them. I'll do it actually in the time order. At the beginning, when you were showing us the sort of web pages and so on, there was a phrase that you're using called LPID, the legal person identifier. And yet the example you were showing us was of a company registration. Do you separate out the terminology about organization ID and legal person ID? I know that there's this idea of legal entity, which is either a person or an organization. How does that wording work?
Yeah, I think that's always kind of an important one. So I think at the moment in the European wallet discussion, there's a lot of discussions on the rule books. So at the moment, we are really following the, let's say, schemas and wordings that are being used in the large-scale pilots, and this one actually coming from EWC and We Build. That is actually these are were the large-scale pilots that focused on the business wallets, and that's actually where the LPID was very much used for the for the legal person identifier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
May I comment on that, Harman?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware of the new regulation about business wallets. I saw there is a little bit of change in terminology. Didn't in that new legislation there was no mentioning of LPID. So it's interesting. I have to read it again, but what I saw there was no mentioning of LPID.
Yeah, I think it's well, we'll reread. Thank you, Saeed. The European work. I know it's very current, that work.
Yes.
I was thinking of in Australia, which is only the Australian law, not the European or anything, but there's a separation of the registering of a company, albeit that when you register a company, the officers of that company are also kind of registered, but they identify. So there's an ABN number for CEFACT, for example. And if you look up the records, eventually you'll find the ASIC record that says who are the company officers for CEFACT, but the ABN number is almost like a separate thing. And then we have director ID for directors of companies, which is a sort of equivalent of an LTIP. But anyway, okay, that was interesting. So
yeah, and this is really like a super important topic, right? And I think also in the sandbox project we did in the past years, we've actually had several different namings and versions, right? Literally from KVK registration until. So I think this is not yet decided and final.
I think there's and I'm sure you guys are very much on top of the important reason. Last 2 weeks ago, one of the questions I was asking Alina about was her focus on the privacy impact of contents of a digital identity anchor. And in my thinking, when we're dealing with what are in legal terms publicly listed companies or publicly kind of registered companies, generally speaking, in the currency of trade, organizations that are trading with each other. By definition, almost, the information about the company is public. And therefore, it's okay. There's the privacy issues don't really come into play. They might have commercial confidentiality, they might have other things, but the name of the company and its number and other things, these are not issues that are sensitive from a privacy point of view. Whereas when you add in individuals' names and other things, yes, you start getting into that area. So I'm very keen to separate out these two concepts if we can. To avoid unnecessarily including privacy. We do need to include privacy when we need to, but I don't want to get complicated before we have to get complicated.
Yeah, but John, if it is a sole one person company, then
dropped a bit there, Saeed. Can you repeat that response?
well, if it's a one-person company, then of course the privacy issue is still at large because you have an identification number for the registration that fits one-on-one on that person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not in all cases.
That's true. That's true. I guess I'm trying to avoid complexity. As you can imagine, I'm trying to avoid complexity unless we have to sort of confront it. My current thinking is that if a registry exists that has details about a company, and any person is publicly able to search this registry, even if it's on a web page or so on, and that does have links and names of people, then kind of so be it. That for whatever reason that is satisfy whatever the privacy rules are in that country, and therefore we're not doing any additional harm by putting that information in a digital identity anchor. But if we surface something in a digital identity anchor that is inherently private, then yes, you're right. Of course, we do need to take extra cares and hopefully avoid it if we can. Anyway, interesting topic. That was my first question.
Maybe just one comment on it, John. I think what we try to do is with this architecture, with all the different parties involved, we try to do something which would allow both, right? So literally let the use case and the actual law decide what can be in or out, and also companies deciding what they publicly make available or not. They can also decide to selectively disclose stuff. So
I so want to put in our documentation something as simple as it's up to the nation state to decide what their privacy rules and laws are.
Exactly.
and they put in what they choose is appropriate for their country in their DIA, and that's it, right? That hasn't broken any. They are required not to break their privacy rules, and nor should they. But if it's different to another country, it's different. We don't need to provide a universal approach.
Exactly.
I don't think. Anyway, good. Alex, did you have a question that you're asking? Then I saw something pop up in chat.
Oh no, it was just a comment just saying, like, you know, in the UK, if you have a one-person company, then unlike in the EU, they say that it's not PII if you have information about that company that relates to a person. And then I was saying, like, conversely, in South Africa, all legal entity information, even like legal entity like identifiers and legal entity data, is considered PII. So there's not going to be any way that we can win this with a technical solution.
So you give me a great example, Alex, of let the country decide, right? And whatever
it's
they
exactly
decide.
that was my point.
Right. Yeah. Next question, if I may. I mean, obviously, you knew Harman and say this is very relevant to our conversations that we've had about GTR and grid and so on, and no other work will be relevant too. How much of this is already kind of like authoritative? You use the phrase sandbox when you're showing us, which is great, fantastic, I understand. Is any of this sort of in the wild already? When do you hope that it becomes legally meaningful?
Yeah, so I think what's important, which I didn't really mention yet, is but we are currently, for instance, doing a pilot where where each of these organizations are using so-called Q seals, which are kind of the legally binding signatures for organizations in Europe already for a couple of years. So the idea is that in the DID, so each of these organizations have a Q seal from a official EIDAS QTSP, so on the EIDAS trust list as well, and that signature is connected with the DID of the company, so it's a verification method, and we're currently testing that. And the idea is also that if and it's actually so far it's been completely successful. So the whole idea is that once that is actually in place, when you start signing credentials with those seals, they actually become legally binding. So I think at the moment, on answering your question, is we're experimenting with that. I think, of course, in Europe, the EU business wallet is still something, gonna take relatively a lot of time. But we are now looking for ways how it actually could be implemented already earlier, for instance, by using those Q seals. But I think at the same time, most of these projects are all still part of the innovation teams. Similar, like Said is part of the innovation team of the Chamber of Commerce, and in a similar way, we're also teaming closely with the innovation team of the Dutch Tax Office, and we're trying to go kind of hand in hand with the large-scale pilots. But we're very concrete on this. I think that's why.
That's cool. I guess I think you're going to be quite soon to that point, right? But what I was in my mind imagine where you already had GRID running as this UN CEFACT hosted registry of registries, and it asks of Holland, who is it that registers organizations? And you come back with KVK registers organizations. Okay, what does KVK publish? How does it publish? What's the identifier structure? And is it verifiable? And legally, can you rely upon that digital artifacts and so on? And at the moment, as you get towards the end of that series of questions, it's not yet, right? We're not yet at that point, but it sounds like we'd be quite close. But it would imply, I think there's an implication in that there's almost like an implementing act for a country to actually make it a law that this digital artifact is equivalent to another thing that you could get as a paper copy or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe Said should answer the question actually, because I think this is also the question, like when do we kind of estimate that actually the Dutch Chamber of Commerce would actually really issue those credentials in a way that they consider it legally binding? I think it will take a bit of time, but Said, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, I agree. It will take a little bit of time. So we are figuring out what the law expects of us to do. And then we, within those constraints of the law, we will, of course, issue verifiable credentials to natural person wallets and also business wallets. So the timeline is the timeline of the AEDAS regulation, of course. But we are now the products of the, I put it in English, the lawyers,
Lawyers, yeah.
Lawyers company, yeah. They're studying what are the obligations, and from that it will be taken into the organization, the IT department, to figure out what has to be done. Should we build our issuing service, or should we use from the market and then put our name on it? So they are very lot of different choices that we have to make.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yes, you're right. There's a lot. There are a lot many steps to take. Alex, your hand is up.
Yeah, no, firstly, I just want to say, Harman Saeed, like, brilliant presentation, brilliant demo. I really see the value in what you guys are building, and I think there's a lot of similarities with what I'm going to show next week. Just a couple of more technical questions. So, assuming that these credentials get issued at some point through the Dutch Chamber of Commerce, who would be hosting them? Would it be the Dutch Chamber of Commerce themselves, or is it the responsibility of the legal entity to go to their like DidWeb sort of endpoint and then upload their legal entity credential, or digital entity anchor sort of style information themselves, or is it going to be hosted by the Dutch Chamber of Commerce? Because I think that's quite an important distinction for how this gets passed and then brought into the blue pages.
Yeah, well, I think trying to answer quickly, easily. So I think there are two ways. So either you indeed go to the website of the Chamber of Commerce, just like I kind of showed, right? Where you kind of pick up your LPID credential, your DIA credential, or you do it actually directly from the wallet. So it's kind of issuer initiated flow. So we follow the OpenID for VCI flows, or we've implemented two different, or the solution uses two different flows. So either from the wallet, you have an overview of issuers, which is actually also a kind of a FIDES community kind of tool where there's this overview of all kinds of credentials being issued. So, and one of them is actually that Chamber of Commerce credential. So you pick that up, and you don't need to go to that KVK environment, or vice versa.
Can I ask a follow-on question, because it's similar to what I was thinking of as well? And also thank you both for as Alex said, it is a great demo of what you've been building. When you're talking about the crawling process and the sort of discovery process that the Blue Pages concept is doing, it struck me that similar to Alex, what could somebody plant a DidDoc that just they randomly create with their own sort of self-issued stuff, and you find it and go, oh, here it is, there's a company, and you got a fake company kind of introduction into the Blue Pages? Or does the Blue Pages check to see, well, who signed or co-signed? Is this actually a valid company registered? That kind of thing.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So the whole idea is, yes, anybody can make a DID, right? And by the way, this Blue Pages can crawl different types of DID docs. At the moment, there's two crawlers for DidWeb or for DidEPSI, but it could be anything else. But it's just a matter of a project creating an extension for an audit method. And then, yes, it could pick up any DID document, but each of these different catalogs are configured to crawl DIDs with particular characteristics. So it only searches, for instance, we also have this example of a catalog that only searches DIDs for clean fuel badges. So it needs to have particular endpoints in the DID document to kind of recognize it for a particular catalog. So and for instance, for the KVK catalog or for the Blue Pages catalog, we actually search for organizations that have particular credential types. And then, of course, the main thing is that are issued by particular issuers. So each of these catalogs are always connected with a organizational wallet on its own. So for instance, the FIDES Blue Pages catalog is connected with the FIDES organizational wallet. In the organizational wallet of the FIDES organization, there is a trust list that has an overview of trusted issuers for particular credentials, and that kind of is checked. But I think at the same time we continue to say every wallet or organization wallet in the end also is responsible for their own verification checks. So yes, the catalog also checks it, but it should not be considered as the trust anchor. That's not the purpose of that role.
It does sound similar to the our process of quality control, if you like, for what we hope to put in the grid, is that the nation states members of the United Nations declare this to be their registrar for this thing. So KVK is registrar for the Netherlands, and that's through the sort of trust channel, if you like, the United Nations representatives for that nation state. So that can still have errors coming in or something, right? But it's the channel we have available to us. And specifically, we'd kind of wash our hands of, well, if the nation state says that's their registrar, that's what they've told us. We don't have any other checks to do than that. That they've told us that's the official one. That's what we were told. It's interesting, isn't it? Few more minutes to go. I've got 2 more questions. Does anyone else want to come in before I go with my 2?
I'll like 2 seconds question is
Go.
You mentioned it was open source. Could you put some of the links in the chat so I could just go and take a look?
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Over to you, John.
No, that'll come up in the minutes as well. That's superb. We've already touched on one of these things. You were saying, I asked a question in writing, do organizations decide who they trust, or are some sources automatically trusted? There was a very interesting, couple of years ago now, EIDAS sort of experts in cryptography getting upset around the idea that the countries of Europe were going to force whitelisting of their own PKI systems, because that's the way that the wallets would automatically recognize and do things. And cryptography experts pointed out that some countries had behaved badly with their own PKI systems and put middlemen in and other things. And therefore, I was interested in this idea about how much of it is self-determined and how much of it is said. That may not be a question that's easy to answer quickly. Is there any kind of quick response?
I think we've discussed the same question over and over again as well. So I think we are on the same page in a way that what we're kind of saying is that the wallet, either for an organization or a person, they have to have certain sovereignty about those type of trust options, right? So we expect that countries will come up with all kinds of trust lists and templates, right? Which probably will be mandated, for instance, in the official EUDI wallets. But what we think that makes a lot of sense is that every organization or country can also add or extend that trust kind of lists. And so, so I do think the EU will have and it's clear they have a trust list, right? Which explains what are the qualified trust service providers, etc., like a certificate authority type of chain. But we think it can perfectly be combined, right? So we just kind of architected for diversity, right? So it can be the complete existing old-fashioned PKI kind of trust, combined with more progressive trust that relies on VCs or DC combined. May need some more time to dive into it, but yeah, I think we've kind of thought about the exact same things.
Same problems. The last question is one that we can maybe go into in subsequent meetings, but it's an observation on my part. I started on this journey with these projects with the UNTP initiative, United Nations Transparency Protocol, and in that group of people, there's been a body of sort of presentation or thinking about what they're doing, which differentiates itself from the standard issuer holder verifier pattern that we probably all got used to from W3C and so on. And there's a couple of reasons why they do that. One is they have this very strong notion of linked data, open linked data kind of approach, which lets you do this trust graph, so that a relying party can sort of trace back up a supply chain to the other participants without having to sort of actively be part of the process. But I think that the wallet concept you're presenting, particularly the business wallet concept, enterprise wallet concept, does have a place even in the UNTP implementation. And I think they've unnecessarily pulled away from wallets, and we don't need wallets. I think in the sense they might need wallets, they just don't need to call them wallets.
This is a semantical discussion.
Yeah, it's okay. So I think the functionality that you need to have is somewhat like, you're agreeing to, Alex. So we'll park this. It's something I might need to talk to Steve
Maybe
about.
just one liner on that, John, because I totally agree. And for instance, in this organizational wallet, you should be able to we for instance do a project with e-invoicing. The issue holder verifier doesn't count for that, right? It's very important that you know the issuer of an invoice, right? And anybody could see,
that's an example Steve uses. That's why you don't need a wallet. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but exactly, and I think that's a terminology thing, right? So what we call an organizational wallet is the combination of those features. We just realized quite long ago that if you do credentials somehow, you need to be able to issue, hold, and verify, right? That's yeah, that's it.
Well, I'm sure Alex is going to expand on this a lot more in a couple of weeks' time. So we'll hear more about what checks are doing and how that's working. I'm happy to say extremely thank you very much for that. That was fantastic. The only other stuff I wanted to share about the project was to do with scrolling around this UNICC GitLab space, but we don't need to talk about that. It's up and running. It's okay. Node.js isn't always my friend, is all I want to say about it. But that was a great presentation, Saeed and Herman. Thank you very much. Alex, you just asked one more question. Is that presumably to Harman? Yeah.
Yeah, I just took a look through the link you sent, Harman. I mean, there's a lot in there about e-invoicing, but if you have an example of how like a DID document would point to a link to VP with a credential, I would love to see that, because I might be able to basically use that, build it into the demo for next week, and build something incredibly aligned. So
maybe we should do one-on-one email on some of this stuff, because we're actually in the middle of some projects where we're doing the same thing with some other party that have the same question. So I think we'll figure it out.
Go find a room, guys. That's fine. I don't know.
Cheers, John.
I know you're in different countries, so it's not appropriate in any sense. Cool. Thank you very much. I'm going to call kind of quits in the meeting. I know that there are people pinging me about Senegal. So in about half an hour's time, if those of you want to or are able to, you can hop on a link that I shared earlier on this chat for the Senegal forums. And I think all of them are open. So you'll see the one that's coming up for the Global Trust Registry project. But there are others that if you're interested, you can listen in on. And I'm sure the proceedings are published, or however the CEFACT body do it. But there's a lot of presentations going on in Senegal this week.
Unfortunately, I'm not able to join, but yeah.
I think there's a bunch of things happening. Thanksgiving Day and other things. That's Alina's in Geneva and also on other CorpMe conference that's on other one, which is our land registry organization for Europe. So I think that's her double up. So thank you very much, everybody. That was fabulous. It's been recorded, and we'll check the notes and the transcripts. And if there's any questions, Harman, I'll go back to you about the accuracy of what's been recorded and transcribed, so that we can correct it. But I'd encourage you and Alex to connect over the next week or two, and we'll look forward to Alex's presentation in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Have a good week.
Okay, bye. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Saeed.
Bye.
Bye.